Hi everyone, Amber here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be sharing with you how to create this super adorable memory Dex card / mini album set. So it is much quicker and easier to create than it looks. It's basically just a DIY treat bag attached to a blank memory Dex card. And then I designed a teeny tiny chipboard mini album that fits perfectly inside of it. So here I'm showing you the one that I already created. I think it's so adorable. I love anything that is teeny tiny. I just think it makes it extra cute, and I cannot wait to add photos to the one I'm showing you here. So we are going to start with the treat bag portion of this memory Dex card. So as always, measurements will be listed down below in the description box so you can follow along easier. We are going to need a double-sided piece of paper for the base, some straps for the handles, and some memory Dex cards to attach it to. So I'm starting with the box part of the bag, and it measures 5.5 inches by 6 inches. On the 5.5 inch side, I'm scoring at 1.25 inch, flipping it to the opposite side and scoring at 1.25 inch again. Then on the 6 inch side, I'm scoring at 2 3/8 of an inch, flipping it to the other side and scoring at 2 3/8 of an inch again. So that is all the scoring that you have to do for this part. It's super easy. You can see here that I have already added my stitching off camera, and I just think that gives it a lot of nice texture and something else to kind of look at. So now I am scoring up on all of my score lines. And side note here, I did film myself embellishing this project when it was completed, but I lost that footage, unfortunately. So you won't get to see that part, but you get to see the tutorial part of this project, which is the most important anyway. So now you will see here that there are 2 squares on your template, and you are just going to cut up on those from both sides to separate it from those rectangular parts, and then you are going to cut at a diagonal to create a tab. This just makes it easier to adhere everything together, makes it much more nice and neat when you're doing that. So I'm just going to cut up and then cut in at a diagonal. And now it's time to assemble this box part of the bag. So I'm first going to flip in those little tabs that we have, and I'm going to take some 1/4 inch double-sided tape. You can use whatever adhesive that you have. I just think tape is the easiest. So I'm just going to add 3 little strips to each tab here. And then before I adhere those to anything, I'm going to apply adhesive to the tab that's going to be showing on the outside of the box. You'll see what I mean in a minute. It's kind of hard to explain, but you can see I stitched on those 2 rectangular pieces, and that's because I knew they were going to be showing on the outside. So I'm just going to be adding some double-sided tape right to the inside part of those. And I can fit 4 pieces of double-sided tape right in there nicely. So I'm just going to add that, and then it will be time to adhere everything together. So you can kind of already see that this is super quick. If you were using a different type of adhesive, it would go faster. So now I'm going to quickly just show you what it will look like and how we are going to assemble it. So that is how we are going to put it together. So I'm just going to remove the backing of my tape. And this one did not want to come off. So just going to remove the backing, and then I will very slowly and carefully, so that I can get a nice edge, line that up and secure it down, and then do the same on the other side. And then it will be time to adhere the other sides down. So you can see why I only stitched on these sides. The other ones would be covered up, and there wouldn't really be a point in adding stitching when it won't be seen. So that's just if you are going to add stitching, just so you don't waste time adding it somewhere where it's not going to be seen at all. So now that I've removed the tape, I'm just going to line that up. I'm sorry that this is a bit off camera. it's just hard to make sure that I'm always in frame while trying to keep the camera zoomed in enough so you guys can see everything up close and nicely. But you're just going to fold those flaps over and secure them down. As always, I like to use my scoring tool to make sure everything is stuck down nicely. And that is the first part done. So now we are going to add our straps. So our straps measure 5 inches by 1/2 inch. And I'm just showing you here how we are going to put those down. Now on the card I showed you at the start, to adhere these down, I used eyelets, and I think that is a super cute look. I much prefer it than just using hot glue, but I think the eyelets I have are a bit too big for this project. I want to look into getting some smaller ones. So for now, I'm just going to stick to hot glue. So I'm gluing these straps about 1/2 inch down and 1/2 inch away from the edge on both sides. So you can see here, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. If you want to get really precise, you can measure everything out, but I think estimating works just as good. And now I'm going to do the back side here. So again, just 1/2 inch or so down and then 1/2 inch or so from the edges. And again, sorry, it's off camera. I will try to make sure with the next video everything's on camera, but this is pretty straightforward. So just glue the straps into place. And now that that is done, it's time to move on to making it into a memory Dex card by just gluing it to the memory Dex card base. So I have 2 pieces here. I just cut these out with my Cricut and stitched some heavyweight card stock to the back of each. So now I'm just going to adhere it together. You can use any type of memory Dex card you have. You can cut one with your cutting machine or use a punch, or just hand make one. The only thing that really matters is that it measures 3 inches in width. So keep that in mind. So I'm just adding some double-sided tape here to the middle majority part of one of my memory Dex bases. And then I'm going to attach them like that so that the majority of them are together. And then I will add hot glue into all those little nooks and crannies that I couldn't really add any tape to. So I'm just trying to line this up properly. I have to bring it close to my face so I can make sure everything's even. And once that is done, then I will bring in the hot glue. And my hot glue gun is, the cord is all tangled. I don't store it in the best way possible. So it has knots in it, and since I'm too lazy to sit there and unknot it all, I just have to kind of pull things closer to me where the outlet is to use the hot glue gun. So sorry about that, but I'm just hot gluing the rest of it down. So if you use a glue stick or wet glue, or you could just stitch these together and then you won't have to worry about using adhesive, that all would work nicely too. So now I'm going to just adhere it down like this. And after that, you have your memory Dex card done. So super, super easy. You do not have to do the mini album. I love chipboard mini albums. I love making them teeny tiny. I think they look really cute. But if you're not into mini albums, or you just don't want to make one, you can totally stop here and just use this memory Dex card as a little gift bag for a pen pal or a snail mail friend, or just use it to store something else besides a mini album. So this is how you do the base, and now we are going to be moving on to the mini album part. So to make the mini album, we are going to need some chipboard. Mine is medium weight, and the brand is Graphics, I believe. So I have two pieces here that measure 2.5 by 2.5 inches, and the spine measures 1 inch by 2.5 inches. You will also need a piece of paper that measures 3.5 inches by 8 inches, 7.5 inches. The measurements will be listed down below. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will double check and leave them in the description box. And then that is for the outside wrapping of the chipboard, and the lining will measure 2.25 inch by 6 inches. So that one I am sure on. But yes, as always, measurements down below, and they will be more reliable than me doing this voiceover right now. So to start, I'm taking my outside paper, I'm laying it flat, and I am removing all the backing of my double-sided tape, and then I am just adhering these down in the pattern that you can see. So of course the spine is in the middle, and I just like to eyeball the space in between. I make these so often, it comes pretty naturally to just know where they should be. So then I'm going to smooth it out, so you should have something that looks like this. Then I'm going to take my scoring tool and just run it along the edges of all of them. This just helps the paper become more pliable, so you're making like a score line basically. So I'm doing that on all 4 sides, and then I'm taking my scissors and I'm cutting off all the corners, leaving about 1/8 of an inch or so of paper left. You want to be careful not to cut off too much. You don't want to cut right up against the corner because then your chipboard will peek through. So it's better to have more than less paper on that corner. So now I'm just pre-folding all of my papers over, and then I'm going to go in and add my double-sided tape. So I'm just adding a strip to each panel here that I'm going to be folding over, except the one that was a little bit larger, so I'm adding 2 pieces to that one. And then after that, I'm just going to remove the backing, and I like to, when wrapping my chipboard, I like to fold over the longer sides first. I think it just makes it easier to do as a process. So I'm starting with this one here, and I'm just folding it over, and you can see I'm kind of pushing it down and outwards to smooth it all out. And right there, I get a little bit of a crinkle in the paper, and I try to smooth it out a bit, but it won't matter in the end because the lining of the album will cover that up. So I like to use my scoring tool to make sure everything's adhered. And then I am moving on to the sides here. And a nice little trick is if you have that excess paper, just use the tip of your scoring tool or a pencil, or if you have long nails, your fingernails would work, just to push that little bit of paper in, and that will give you a nicer, cleaner look. If you don't do that, you'll have a sharper corner. I guess it's up to you what kind of look you're going for. So now that that's done, I'm just going to smooth everything out, and this is how the lining will look. But before that, I'm going to go off camera and add some stitching to my album base. So you can see here, I just did that with some gold thread and my sewing machine. So now it's time to add the lining. So I already added a whole bunch of double-sided tape, and now I am just removing the backing. This is such a tedious process. I have so much adhesive on my nails by the time a project is done, but it's worth it in the end. So I'm just removing all that backing, and then I'm going to just carefully try to keep everything aligned and add the lining to the album. So just making sure that all the sides are even, and then I'm going to use my scoring tool to again make sure it's adhered. You really want to take your time with this part to make sure you smooth out any air bubbles. You don't want to fold up on your album and have air bubbles under the paper. That's always a bummer. So just make sure you really take your time to adhere everything. And then I'm using my scoring tool to just fold up on those score lines, and that is the base of the album. So now I am going to be adding a strap. So I have this piece here that measures 1 inch by 8 inches, and I am just measuring out roughly how much tape I'm going to need to put on the back of this to adhere it down. So I'm just kind of lining it up, and then I'm going to pinch and fold over so I know where to stop with the tape. Then I'm going to add tape and secure it down. So this will act as that little strap, as you saw at the start, that you can tuck in to keep the album closed. So I am just adding tape, I'm sure, yes. And now I'm going to remove the backing and then line it up as best I can where I want it and use my scoring tool to secure it down. And then we will also be creating a little buckle that this can slide into to, of course, keep the album closed. Without a buckle, it would be useless. You could use a magnet or some Velcro, though. That would work just as well, and probably be easier than adding a buckle. So if you don't want to do the buckle, then definitely just grab some Velcro or a magnet. I love magnetic closures. I just ran out of magnets, so I need to get some more of those. And now I am just using my scoring tool to curl that end bit up so that I'll be able to nicely tuck it in. So now I'm creating the buckle. So again, sorry this is off camera. I basically took a piece of scrap paper. I scored it at 3/8 of an inch and then at 1.5 inches. And then I cut off any excess that was hanging so that I had about 3/8 of an inch tab on both sides. I folded those over, and then I'm just going to hot glue it to the cover of the album. So you'll see here what it looks like. Again, it's straightforward and super simple. And I'm sorry that it's not in view. So super simple though. You can see here that I already glued the top down, and now I'm just gluing the bottom. So super quick, and then I'm using my scoring tool to kind of puff up the inside, and then the little strap will slip right through, and that will keep your album closed. So now it's time to move on to the pages. So I have 5 sheets of paper here, and they measure 2 inches by 4 inches. I have backed them so that there's pattern paper on both sides, since this paper pad was single-sided, and I stitched around the edge of all of them, and I will be folding those in half. So again, pages are super simple. And now I am using some elastic. You can use twine or just regular string to hold your pages in place. I like to use elastic just so that way if I ever wanted to add more pages, it would have space for that. So I'm just deciding here what color to go with, and I went with pink and blue in alternating pattern to match the little memory Dex card there. So I'm just cutting off camera here 5 pieces. So then I will be using that to bind all my pages in. So since the spine of this album is so small, it's only 1 inch, I didn't think that accordion hinge binding would work very well, and it's too small for binder rings. So I just thought, what's better than elastic? A perfect way to hold the pages in place, and it also adds a really cool look to the spine from the outside of the album. So now to add the elastic, I am just wrapping it around the album and tying it in a tight knot so that it doesn't come undone, and then cutting off the excess. So that is all I'm doing here. And I'm going to do that with all 5 pieces of my elastic. Again, you could just use twine or yarn, anything would work. Just make sure you leave enough space so your pages can slide underneath them and through them. I'm also going to be adding a charm to the center elastic. So when you look at the spine from the outside, there will be 5 pieces of elastic. I'm trying to think of a better way to explain that. But on the center one, I'm going to be adding a little charm from the Sunny Days collection just to tie everything together. And you could totally add more charms or beads if you want to. Just keep in mind that you don't want to make the spine from the outside too chunky, because then it won't fit properly into the little Memory Dex bag that we have. Same goes for the cover of this album. Just there is some room for embellishing. Just keep it to a minimum, and obviously as you go along, just check to make sure it still fits in the little bag. So I am just tying all of my elastics into place here. And again, just making sure it's a tight knot so it doesn't come open. So you can see here now that I have 5 alternating pieces of elastic in place, ready for my pages to go in. So now I am going to take my pages and I'm just going to fold them in half. So since I did double up on these pages, and by that I mean just gluing 2 pattern papers back to back, it was kind of the paper didn't want to bend, so there was a little bit of tearing on the edges here when I fold down on those, which is always a shame, which is why I love double-sided paper so much, because you can avoid that from happening. But the good thing is that the spines of the pages will be tucked in to the spine of the album, so you won't really have to worry about seeing that. So just keep that in mind if you double up on paper. And now that my pages are all folded, I am going to just slip them into the album in whatever kind of patterns I want the order to go in. So after I add those in, the base of the project is done. Like I said, I lost the footage of the embellishing process, but at least the tutorial was okay. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry that some bits were off camera. Next time I will make sure to just zoom it out a bit so that way you can see more. But I did include some videos at the end here of the Memory Dex set we made today, as well as some other ones I made. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you do decide to make this project, I would love to see it. So please feel free to tag me on Instagram at Bambi's Mail. That is linked down below. And I will see you guys in my next video. Take care and happy crafting. Bye.